www.omarfigueroa.com.
This is your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. Michigan driver who uses medical marijuana wins appeal from USA Today. The Michigan Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that medical marijuana users aren't automatically breaking the law if they're caught driving after using the drug. It's illegal for Michigan drivers to consume marijuana, but the state's high court said medical marijuana users have some protection. The court says police must show that a driver actually was under the influence of marijuana for a charge to stick. The court suggested lawmakers consider setting a marijuana limit similar to a blood alcohol level. The justices said, quote, "It goes almost without saying that the medical marijuana law is an imperfect statute, the interpretation of which has been repeatedly required this court's attention. Indeed, this case could have been easily resolved if the law had provided a definition of under the influence," end quote. Los Angeles voters approve limiting medical marijuana shops from Reuters.com. Los Angeles, which has more storefront medical marijuana shops than any other U.S. city, will close hundreds of the dispensaries and hike taxes on those that will be allowed to remain under a ballot measure approved by a wide margin of the voters. Nearly 63% of voters supported Proposition D, which will cap the number of medical pot dispensaries at 135. Two rival measures that also would have placed new restrictions on the city's medical marijuana industry were defeated by wide margins. At least 850 storefront medical cannabis shops are estimated to be operating in Los Angeles, the country's second largest city, and some residents have complained that the dispensaries are a blight on their neighborhoods. The dispensaries that will be allowed to remain were in operation before city leaders approved a moratorium in September 2007 in a failed effort to prevent the arrival of new storefronts selling marijuana as medicine. David Welch, an attorney for Angelenos for Safe Access, a group that had spearheaded one of the failed measures, said he would file a lawsuit challenging Proposition D on behalf of dispensaries that would not qualify under the new rules. OAS Study calls for debate on marijuana legalization from Time.com. The Organization of American States, based in Washington, just tossed the White House a message it would rather not hear. It's time to seriously discuss legalizing marijuana as one means of reducing the Western Hemisphere's harrowing drug violence. That conclusion from a study presented last Friday in Bogota, Colombia, by OAS Secretary General Jose Miguel Insulza, is one that a growing number of Latin American governments, including Uruguay, which legalized marijuana last year, are urging the Obama administration to accept. Why do we waste so many resources, almost $10 billion each year in the U.S. alone, as well as lives, hunting down marijuana users and sellers? The OAS's $2 million report, The Drug Problem in the Americas, seems to ask the same thing. It's high time to ask whether marijuana legalization might help reduce drug cartel revenues and therefore drug cartel mayhem. Studies indicate it could rob Mexico's narco mafias of a third of the estimated $30 billion they rake in each year. South Carolina lawmaker proposes legalized medical marijuana from WLTX. Did you know that according to South Carolina law, the state's Department of Health and Environmental Control has the authority to obtain and distribute medical marijuana? That is, as long as it's in line with federal law. Now, one House lawmaker says it's time for South Carolina to catch up with other states legalizing the drug. Representative Todd Rutherford attempted to put an amendment addressing the drug in a controlled substances bill this afternoon. He says the state law addressing medical marijuana was passed back in 1980. His move was shut down, with others saying it was irrelevant to the bill. But Rutherford says the drug can help those suffering from various conditions, and he is not giving up. He says he has other plans to address medical marijuana before this session ends next month, and again next year if necessary. ABC Medical Committee to discuss WADA's increased marijuana threshold. From SureDog.com. The Association of Boxing Commissions will soon examine and consider the World Anti-Doping Agency's new marijuana threshold. Quote, "In combat sports, marijuana may be used for purposes of elevating pain threshold. There is also concern as to whether reaction time may be altered with use," the commission's spokesperson told SureDog.com. Therefore, at present, the 15 nanogram per milliliter rule still applies. Whether therapeutic use exemptions should be granted for medicinal purposes will be one of the topics for discussion next week. End quote. WADA officials recently announced that the marijuana testing threshold will be raised from 15 nanograms to 150 nanograms, lowering the chances an athlete will be flagged for out-of-competition use. Meanwhile, the NCAA has cracked down on its marijuana testing, lowering the threshold from 15 nanograms to 5 nanograms. And that's your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. When we come back, we go behind the headlines with a story from National Public Radio, Go East, Young Marijuana Dealer, examining the economics of marijuana trafficking. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. We'll be right back after this.